My name is Margaret Holloway. I have lived in the same white clapboard house on Birchwood Lane in Stratford, Ontario, for most of my adult life. The maple tree in the front yard was planted the year my husband and I moved in, just a sapling then, barely taller than my knee. Now it stretches up past the second floor, its branches wide enough to throw shade across the entire porch on summer afternoons. That tree has seen everything this house has seen. It was there when my children took their first steps on the lawn. It was there when my husband passed. And it was there, on that Tuesday morning in October, when everything I thought I understood about my family began to unravel. The day started the way most of my days do. I woke before 6, made a pot of strong black tea, and stood at the kitchen window watching the light come up over the backyard fence. The leaves were just beginning to turn, the maples along the alley going orange and red at the edges. I had nowhere to be that morning. My daughter-in-law was bringing my grandson Tyler over after school, and I was planning to bake a pan of butter tarts in the afternoon. Nothing about that Tuesday felt different from 100 other Tuesdays. Tyler arrived earlier than expected. He was 15 then, a quiet boy with his mother's dark eyes and a habit of chewing on his hoodie strings when he was thinking. His mother, my son's ex-wife Carla, dropped him at the door around 8:30, said she had a work appointment she couldn't reschedule, and asked if I could keep him until the afternoon. I said of course. Tyler shrugged off his backpack and dropped onto the couch without a word. He looked tired in the way teenagers always seem tired, like the world was asking slightly more of him than he had to give. I asked if he wanted breakfast. He said he wasn't hungry. I made him toast anyway and set it on the coffee table beside him without comment. That was something I had learned in 67 years of living around other people. Sometimes you don't ask. You just put the toast down and let them decide. I went about my morning, watered the plants along the windowsill, washed the breakfast dishes, made a second cup of tea, and sat in the armchair by the front window with the crossword from yesterday's paper. Tyler eventually ate the toast. I didn't say anything about it. Around 10, he fell asleep on the couch with the television on low. I put a blanket over him and turned the sound down further. I had a load of laundry to fold upstairs, and I thought I would do that and then come back down and start on the butter tart pastry. I was in the upstairs hallway, just outside the linen closet, when I heard the front door open. I assumed it was the wind at first. The old storm door sometimes swings open on its own if you don't pull it fully shut. But then I heard footsteps on the hardwood in the entry, deliberate and slow, the kind of steps someone takes when they believe the house is empty. I didn't move. Something kept me still, some instinct I couldn't name, standing in the hallway with a folded towel pressed against my chest. My son, Gordon, appeared below me. I could see him through the gap between the railing posts. He was looking toward the living room and then toward the kitchen. He didn't call out for me. He didn't call out at all. He simply moved through my house the way a person moves through a space they have already decided belongs to them. He went to the roll-top desk in the study. I heard the familiar sound of it opening, the wooden slats rolling back. That desk had been my husband's. It was where we kept the household papers, the insurance documents, the copy of my will, the title to the house. Gordon knew this. He had helped me organize it after his father died. I heard him rifling through the drawers, then the sound of papers being shuffled. Then his phone buzzed and I heard him answer in a low voice. "I'm in," he said. "Yeah. Give me 10 minutes. The original's here. I'll get it photographed and then I'll put it back. She won't know. She never checks this thing." I stood in the hallway and did not breathe. The lawyer said, "We just need proof the signature predates the assessment," he continued. "Once we have that, we can file the challenge. She's old. She won't fight it. She won't even understand what's happening until it's already done." He laughed quietly. It was a sound I had heard my whole life, my son's laugh, but in that moment, it sounded like something I had never heard before. The phone call ended. More shuffling. Then the desk rolling shut. Then footsteps moving toward the front of the house again. I did not move until I heard the front door close. I stood in that hallway for a long time after he left. The folded towel was still in my hands. I looked down at it like I wasn't sure how it had gotten there. My legs felt strange, and I sat down on the top step of the stairs and pressed my back against the wall and tried to understand what I had just heard. My son had come into my house without telling me. He had gone through my husband's desk. He was photographing documents. He was working with a lawyer. He believed I would not fight back because I was old, because I would not understand. I sat on that step for a long time. What I did not know yet was that I had not been the only one watching. Tyler had not been asleep. He told me this later. After Gordon had left and after I came back downstairs and sat at the kitchen table with my hands around a mug of tea that I hadn't actually made yet, just holding the empty mug because I needed something to hold. Tyler came in from the living room and sat across from me without being asked. "He didn't see me," Tyler said. "I woke up when the door opened. I stayed under the blanket. I looked at my grandson. He had his mother's dark eyes, and he was watching me with them very carefully." "Did you hear?" I asked. He nodded. I recorded it. He set his phone on the table between us and pressed play. The audio was muffled but clear enough. Gordon's voice, low and certain, explaining the plan to whoever was on the other end of the line. "She won't know. She never checks this thing." And the laugh. Tyler had recorded almost 4 minutes of it before the front door closed. "Gran," he said, "what does he want?" I had to think about how much to tell him. He was 15. He had known Gordon his whole life as his uncle. But he had also just lain still under a blanket and recorded the whole thing, and he was looking at me with an expression that told me he already understood more than I wished he did. So I told him the truth. I told him about the house. Gordon was 51 years old, and he had been struggling with money for most of the last decade. I had watched it happen slowly, the way a person watches a garden go from neglected to overgrown, without any single moment when you could say, "There, that was the day it changed." First, it was the business. He had run a small landscaping company for years, but it had never really recovered after the downturn back around 2015, and he had taken on a line of credit against his own house to keep it afloat. Then his marriage ended. Then the company finally folded. He had been renting an apartment in Kitchener for the past 3 years, and as far as I knew, working odd jobs when he could get them. He had come to me twice in the past year asking for money. The first time, he said he needed help with rent. I gave him what I could. The second time, he said he was behind on his truck payments and could I help just this once. I gave him a little more. Both times I told myself it was fine. He was my son. This is what you do. 8 months ago, he came with papers. He sat at this same kitchen table and explained that he had been talking to a financial advisor who had suggested the smartest thing I could do, for tax purposes and for family stability, was to transfer the house into a joint ownership arrangement. He slid the papers across to me. He had brought a pen. I asked if I could keep the papers and read them over. He said, "Of course." He left them with me. I read them that night. I am not a lawyer, but I can read, and what those papers said was that Gordon would become a co-owner of this property with rights of survivorship, which meant that if I died, the house would pass to him directly, bypassing the will entirely. And if we disagreed about the property, he would have legal standing to force a sale. I did not sign them. He asked again 2 months later. I said I was still thinking about it. He pressed, gently at first and then less gently, saying I wasn't getting any younger and surely I didn't want the estate to be tied up in probate. I said I appreciated his concern. I still did not sign. In the weeks after that, his visits became shorter and his manner became cooler. He stopped calling just to talk. When he did call, there was always an undercurrent of something in his voice, a waiting, a calculation, as though every conversation was leading somewhere he had already decided on. And then there was that Tuesday in October when he walked into my house while he thought I was upstairs and my sleeping grandson was a child who couldn't be counted on to notice anything. Tyler listened to all of this without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" he asked. I held the empty mug in my hands and looked at the backyard through the kitchen window. The maple tree out front was invisible from here, but I knew it was there. I had looked at it from this window for 41 years. "I'm going to do exactly what he expects me to do," I said. "Nothing. For now." I asked Tyler not to say anything to his mother yet. Not because I didn't trust Carla, but because I needed to think, and I needed a little time to act before anyone who might tell Gordon knew that something had changed. Tyler agreed. He was 15, and he had the recording saved in 3 places before I finished asking. That afternoon, I did not bake the butter tarts. Instead, I drove to the public library and used one of the computers to look up the name of the lawyer Gordon had mentioned on the phone. I had heard only a last name, Vickers, but Stratford is not a large city, and there was only one real estate lawyer by that name in the area. I wrote down the address. Then I called a woman I had gone to church with for 20 years, Pauline Ashworth, whose husband had been a paralegal before he retired. I did not tell Pauline exactly what was happening, only that I needed the name of a good estate lawyer, someone who handled property disputes and could see me quickly. Pauline gave me 3 names, and I called all 3 from the library parking lot. The first could not see me for 2 weeks. The second could see me in 4 days. The third, a woman named Sandra Okafor with an office on Ontario Street, could see me the next morning at 9. I was there at 5 to 9 with Tyler's recording on a USB drive and my copy of the unsigned ownership papers in a manila envelope. Sandra Okafor was a small woman in her mid-40s with close-cropped hair and reading glasses that she took on and off constantly throughout our meeting. She listened to the recording twice. She read the ownership papers. She asked me several careful questions about the timeline, when Gordon had first brought the papers, when I had refused, and what I had observed in his behavior since then. Then she leaned back in her chair and looked at me over the top of her glasses. "Mrs. Holloway," she said, "what your son was doing in that study was looking for original documents to photograph and potentially alter or use to support a false claim about your intentions regarding this property. Whether or not he had enough to actually file anything successful, what you heard is evidence of intent, and that recording changes things considerably." She told me what to do. First, I needed to move the original documents out of the roll-top desk immediately and store them somewhere Gordon could not access. She recommended a safety deposit box at my bank. Second, I needed to update my will to make absolutely clear that the property was not to be jointly held and to designate a different executor, someone who was not Gordon. Third, I needed to keep Tyler's recording secure and make sure it was preserved in multiple places. And fourth, I needed to speak to someone at the Stratford Police Service about what had occurred, not necessarily to press charges immediately, but to have the incident on record. I asked her if she thought Gordon would actually try something legally. She took her glasses off and set them on the desk. "He already tried," she said. "He just didn't get what he came for." That afternoon, I went to the bank and rented a safety deposit box. I put the original house title, my will, my husband's death certificate, and 3 other key documents inside it. I gave the second key to my friend Pauline, not because she needed to access it, but because having a second key in someone else's possession felt important. It felt like a fact that existed in the world now, steady and unassailable. The next morning, I called the non-emergency line for the police and spoke with a constable who took down what I told him carefully and suggested I come in to make a formal statement, which I did the following Thursday, with Sandra Okafor sitting beside me. Gordon called me on the Wednesday in between. He called in the evening, around 7, while I was sitting in the living room with the curtains open and the streetlight coming in through the front window. I watched the maple tree outside, the leaves mostly down now, bare branches against the darkening sky, while his name lit up my phone screen. I let it ring 3 times. Then I answered. "Mum," he said, and his voice was warm, the way it gets when he wants something. "How are you? I keep meaning to come by." "I'm fine," I said. "How are you?" "Oh, you know," a pause. "I've been thinking about our conversation, about the house and everything. I know I've been pushing a bit, and I'm sorry for that. I just worry about you." I watched a branch of the maple move in the wind. "I know you do," I said. "I was thinking maybe we could sit down together, just the 2 of us, and I could explain it better. The lawyer has some new ideas that might make more sense to you, make you feel more comfortable with the whole thing." "Which lawyer?" I asked. A small silence, just the fellow I've been working with on some of this. "Vickers," I said. Another silence, longer this time. "Where did you hear that name?" he said. "Gordon," I said. "I think you should get some independent legal advice before we have that conversation." He started to say something, and then stopped. The warmth in his voice had changed into something else, harder and quieter. "Mom, I'm just trying to help you." "I know," I said again. "Good night, Gordon." I hung up. My hands were trembling a little. Not from fear, I realized. From the effort of staying calm. He came to the house 4 days later. A Saturday evening, just after dark. The bell rang, and I looked through the small window beside the door and saw him standing on the porch with his coat collar turned up, his breath coming in small clouds in the October cold. I opened the door. He looked at me for a moment before he spoke. Something in my expression must have told him something was different, though I tried to keep my face still. "I need to talk to you," he said. "Come in," I said. He sat at the kitchen table. I made tea because it gave me something to do with my hands, and it gave him something to look at other than me while I was setting the mugs down. He did not take off his coat. "I got a call from Vickers," he said. "He said he'd received an inquiry about a property dispute at this address." "Did he?" I said. "Mum." He put his hands flat on the table. "What's going on?" I sat down across from him. I had thought about what I wanted to say. I had thought about it for several days, turning it over, deciding what mattered and what didn't. "Gordon," I said, "I know you came into the house on Tuesday." He opened his mouth. "I was upstairs," I said. "I heard you go into your father's desk. I heard your phone call." The color left his face in a way that was startling to watch. I had not seen my son look frightened since he was a boy. "Mum, I can explain." "I'm not asking you to explain," I said. "I'm telling you what I know. You were in this house without permission. You went through private documents. You spoke to someone about photographing them to support a legal claim against this property. I heard it. Someone else heard it too. And it was recorded." He sat very still. "I have already spoken to a lawyer and to the police," I said. "The recording has been given to my lawyer. It's been preserved. The documents you were looking for are no longer in that desk. I have updated my will and my estate arrangements, and I have changed the locks." He looked at the door, as if noticing for the first time that the deadbolt was a different model than it had been. "This is my home," I said. "It was your father's home. I cleaned houses for other people for 16 years so that I could keep it. I am 68 years old, and I am not confused, and I am not going to sign anything that I don't want to sign, and I am not going to be managed or pressured or deceived by my own child." The kitchen was very quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a car went down the street. Gordon looked at his hands on the table. He said nothing for a long time. "I didn't mean," he started. "I think you did," I said. "I think you meant exactly what you said on that phone call. You said I was old and I wouldn't understand what was happening until it was done." He looked up at me. "I'm telling you that I understood everything." He left about 20 minutes later without raising his voice once, which surprised me. I had expected anger. What I got was something closer to shame, though whether it was shame about what he had done or shame about being caught, I couldn't say for certain. When the door closed behind him, I sat back down at the kitchen table and drank the rest of my tea, which had gone cold. I sat there for a while in the quiet kitchen, and I thought about the maple tree out front, standing in the October dark with its branches bare. 2 weeks after that, Sandra Okafor called me. The Stratford Police Service had followed up with a detective who handled financial crimes and elder fraud. They had spoken to Gordon and to the lawyer Vickers. It turned out that Vickers was already under review by the Law Society for a separate matter involving estate documents, and the contact from our detective had triggered a broader look at his practice. One of his associates had, in fact, helped Gordon draft language for an ownership transfer document using a signature date that was falsified. The detective called it fraud. She said it plainly and without softening it, and I appreciated that. Gordon was charged with attempted fraud and with entering a dwelling without lawful excuse. Vickers faced his own proceedings separately. There were months of legal process after that, the way there always are, slow and careful and grinding. I did not enjoy any of it. I want to be clear about that. There is nothing pleasant about watching your child answer for something like this in front of a court. I cried in the car on the way home from the first hearing, parked on a side street with the engine running because it was November and cold, and cried until I was done. But I went back for every hearing. I sat in the gallery with Sandra beside me, and I listened, and I did not look away. The judge, a man named Raymond Atchison, was careful and methodical. He took into account that Gordon had no prior record and that no money had actually changed hands. He did not minimize what had happened, however. He spoke directly about the particular harm of fraud committed against an elderly family member within the home, the betrayal of trust, the deliberate exploitation of age and assumed vulnerability. Gordon was given a conditional sentence with strict terms: no contact with me except through legal counsel, mandatory financial counseling, community service, a prohibition on acting in any representative capacity for anyone's estate or property for 10 years. It was not prison. It was not nothing. After the sentencing, I went to Pauline's house, and she made me supper, and we sat at her kitchen table until nearly 11. She asked me if I felt better. I thought about it honestly. I feel like myself, I said. That's the part that matters. Tyler turned 16 the following spring. I baked him a butter tart cake, which is not a traditional thing but is something he had mentioned wanting once, and he ate 3 slices and looked moderately embarrassed about how happy he was. He had given a statement to the police, just a formal account of what he had heard and how he had made the recording. The detective had been gentle with him, and Carla had been there, and it had been fine. He visited me the weekend after his birthday, and we sat on the porch in the early May sun, the maple just coming into leaf again, green and new at the tips. He asked me if I was still angry at Gordon. I thought about it. I'm sad about it, I said. Angry takes too much of your time. Sad you can carry and still go about your day. He chewed on his hoodie string and looked at the street. He called my mom, he said. He wanted to know if she'd talk to you. I know, I said. Are you going to? Maybe someday, I said. Not yet. Tyler nodded. He seemed to accept that. You were right to record it, I said. I want you to know that. You were a 15-year-old boy lying under a blanket in his grandmother's living room, and you had the presence of mind to do the one thing that made everything else possible. I don't know if I ever said that clearly enough. He looked at his shoes. I just didn't want anyone to take your house, he said. I looked at the maple tree in the front yard, full and green in the May morning. They didn't, I said. I think about that Tuesday often, especially in October when the leaves start to turn and the mornings come in cool and low. I think about standing in the upstairs hallway with a folded towel in my hands and the sound of my son's voice coming up from below, so certain, so careless, so sure that I was someone who could be acted upon rather than someone who would act. I understand now that there were signs long before that morning. The slow withdrawal after I refused to sign, the calls that stopped unless he needed something, the way he framed every conversation about the house as something he was doing for me, when what it always was something he wanted for himself. Love has a way of making you patient with things that do not deserve patience. I do not say this bitterly. I say it as someone who wasted some time I didn't need to waste, being patient when I should have been paying attention. If you are listening to this and something in your own life feels similar, I want to say this directly. If someone is pressuring you to sign documents you haven't read, that pressure is the sign. Read everything. Ask your own lawyer, not the one the other person brought. An independent eye costs money, but it costs much less than what you are being asked to sign away. If a family member has access to your home, your documents, or your accounts, and something in you feels uncertain about that access, trust that feeling. Instincts built over decades are not nothing. They are information. Keep records of conversations that feel off. Write down dates and what was said. If someone calls and the conversation troubles you, note it somewhere. Notes become evidence. Evidence becomes power. And if you are ever made to feel that your age means you are past understanding, past deciding, past protecting what is yours, I want you to hear this clearly. 68 is not confused. 72 is not powerless. 80 is not finished. The people who count on age to make you passive are counting on something that is not true. My husband built a life in that white house on Birchwood Lane with me. My children grew up in it. My grandson fell asleep on its couch on an October morning and woke up at the right moment for everything that came after. That house belongs to me, and now it is mine in writing that no one can touch, and the maple tree is still growing in the front yard, the same as it always was. If this story reached something in you, I would be glad to know it. Leave a comment and tell me about a time you trusted yourself when it would have been easier not to. Those stories matter. Every one of them is someone else finding out they are not alone.